We all know and love the BMW M3, but what many may not realize is that it wouldn't have existed if not for a Mercedes. We start in 1977 when, thanks to an oil crisis, Mercedes-Benz executives finally gave the go-ahead to make a compact Mercedes sedan, which had been an age-old idea. This baby Benz was codenamed the W201 and would go on to become the 190e. Mercedes was so anxious that no one would take the 190 seriously that management gave the engineers some very high and very strict standards for the new car to meet. It had to be as safe as, have the same ride quality, driving position, and interior layout as their full-sized S-Class luxury sedan, which, keep in mind, costed twice as much and had a wheelbase that was almost a foot longer. With an adjusted $4 billion development budget, the Bruno Sacco designed W201 190e somehow hit all of Mercedes' engineering goals and was one of the most aerodynamic and futuristic looking cars at the time. When the 190e debuted in 1982, the public's reaction was overwhelmingly positive, and the proof is all in the sales, seeing as they did sell 1,879,629 units over its 11-year production run. When the idea of a performance version was brought up, it had to meet all the same engineering targets as the regular 190, including comfort, as well as win the World Rally Championship, so that the public would take the new sporty model seriously. They planned to have two versions of the car entered. One would be the regular sedan body style, and the other one would be a shortened wheelbase hatchback version. Both cars would have the same 2.3-liter 4-cylinder block as the regular 190, but with a dual overhead cam 16-valve head designed by Cosworth. Unfortunately, by the time the prototypes were completed, the Audi Quattro had debuted in rally, and Mercedes determined that neither of the new rear-wheel drive 190 rally cars could compete with Audi's four-wheel drive Sport Quattro. Once the higher-ups at Mercedes realized this, they were so pissed that they had done all of this for nothing that they killed any further development of the Cosworth engine and put a company-wide ban on all motorsports.
I read about.
Now, the engineers did not take kindly to this, so to exact their revenge they put the 2.3-liter 16-valve Cosworth engine into the 190e for it to be called the 190e 2.316. How very obvious and very German. They also sharpened up the suspension and internally pitched the idea as a sport package for the 190 that had absolutely nothing to do with racing. Since Mercedes was the standard for luxury, performance, and reliability, they had to prove that the 190 Cosworth was as durable as any other Mercedes. So before launch, they took the sporty 190 to the Nardo Ring, where two of them racked up 50,000 kilometers and achieved an average speed of 247 kilometers per hour, earning itself 3 world records and 9 international class records all before the car was even released. When the all-new Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit was having its big opening in 1984, Mercedes management somehow got bamboozled into setting up a race, presumably being told that it was just a marketing stunt for the 190, and sent 20 identical 2.316s for the inaugural race to open the circuit. All of the cars were being driven by the best F1 drivers, like Niki Lauda, Alain Prost, and Stirling Moss, but among them was a rookie driver from Brazil who won the entire race. That was Ayrton Senna, who went on to be a 3-time world champion and became one of the greatest race car drivers of all time. This race was great publicity for Senna, but more importantly, the 190 Cosworth, as this showed it in action just before the Cosy Benz hit showroom floors. And when it did come out, people were thoroughly impressed with the handling and performance, even before you factor in its insane comfort and build quality. It made 185 horsepower in Euro spec, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize that the Euro cars weighed 2,690 pounds, which means that it could hit 60 in just 7.5 seconds, which is still pretty quick by today's standards. Now, this car had a 5-speed dogleg manual transmission, but I'm gonna let my good friend James May explain to you exactly what that is, as well as demonstrate its key flaw.
What this car has, and that the other two cars don't have, is a dogleg first gear. I should explain this. Normally, first gear is away from you and forwards, but here it is away from you and backwards.
Those are his reversing lights.
Vorwärts! Scheisse.
pain in normal driving, yes, but the gear layout is more suitable for racing, since the gears you use the most on a racetrack are in a perfect H pattern. When it came to handling, Formula 1 driver Martin Brundle said that it had the best handling chassis of any sedan in the world, and upon its release, it instantly sold out. Saying that the Cosworth Baby Benz was a good car is as much of an understatement as calling it a Baby Benz in the first place. As is typical for performance cars of the 80s, the 2.316 came with its own body kit, flared arches, and spoiler. And though people of the 80s thought that those modifications looked childish, they are barely noticeable by today's standards.
That looks like a dildo.
Although you could only get it in two colors, which were blue-black, which is like charcoal, and smoke silver. Since it sold out immediately upon release, Mercedes had no problem meeting the homologation requirement of 5,000 road-going versions. In fact, they sold over 8,000 2.316s. This meant that their cars could be entered into the DTM, which is the German Touring Car Championship, by private teams like AMG, who was not yet officially a part of Mercedes, even though the engineers at Mercedes supplied them with factory race parts against management's instructions. And almost immediately, 190Es started winning DTM races, and there was a certain company in Munich who did not like this one bit. Perhaps you've heard of them. BMW. They were absolutely livid that the 190E was diving headfirst into the sporty compact sedan market with such success, which was something that previously BMW was doing with the 3 Series. Because of this, BMW set to work on making a car to decimate the Cosly Benz. This resulted in one of the most iconic driver's cars of all time, the M3. Both the M3 and the 190 Cosworth had 2.3-liter 4-cylinder 16-valve engines, and both did 143 miles per hour, but the BMW made 197 horsepower, which set off a horsepower war between the two brands which still hasn't ended. When it came to racing, the M3 was winning more races. It outright won the entire 1987 season. But in 1987, Mercedes had a new boss, a man who actually took an interest in motorsport, and he was determined to crush BMW. And throughout the decade, they kept one-upping each other year after year with more powerful versions of their cars, with the engines and body kits getting bigger with each iteration, which eventually culminated in the 2.5-liter 1989 BMW M3 Sport Evo and the absolutely outrageous 1990 Mercedes-Benz 190E 2.516 Evo II, which could hit 155 miles per hour thanks to the addition of AMG's Power Pack, which increased the power of the already stroked 2.5-liter 16-valve motor to 232 horsepower. It had self-leveling height-adjustable hydro-pneumatic suspension that could be raised and lowered at the push of a button, so depending on the situation you could have lowered suspension for track use or raised suspension for street use to get over driveways and speed bumps, which is really helpful when you don't want to scrape up your really expensive body kit. Now, the 2.516 Evo II is the reason I wanted to make this video, so let me indulge for a moment if it's not already obvious. I love this car. In all honesty, it's my favorite car of all time, and I would kill to own one. Like seriously, with the prices these things go for on auction sites, becoming a hitman is really the only way I could ever get one. And that's largely because they only ever made 502 of them. It also has some of the most bonkers factory aero to ever be fitted to a production car. And the best part about it is that, like with the 2.316, it was all functional, not just for show. It had a drag coefficient of 0.29, which made this one of the most aerodynamic sedans of all time. Despite this, both Audi and BMW mocked its bold appearance. Audi's boss, Ferdinand Piëch, Ferdinand Porsche's grandson, said that it looked like it had antlers on its ass, and BMW publicly said that the laws of aerodynamics must be different between Munich and Stuttgart, and that if the Merc's dumb aero actually worked, they would redesign their wind tunnels. And guess what? They did. But in the end, the BMW M3 came out victorious. In racing, it was largely because it had a factory-backed racing program from the get-go. It was also favored more by journalists and the public because the M3 was quite a bit cheaper than its rival and slightly quicker too. The Beamer went on to live a successful life with hot new versions still being cranked out to this very day. But just remember, whenever you see an M3 on the road, you have a Mercedes to thank for its existence. So guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and share with someone who might enjoy this. I'll see you all in the next one, whenever that may be. I've lost all concept of time. I hope you've enjoyed.